Thank you guys. Thank you guys very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, could you all give me a little help here? And you at home, you're going to have to clap really loud. But we want to just welcome Rick Weaver. Come on up, Rick, and I'm gonna straighten this rug so you don't fall. There you go. All right.
Thank you. Woo! Welcome. Jeff, thank you so much. I need to get this thing to work correctly. I want to welcome you. First I want to say to Bob and crew, thank you for that beautiful music. You do such a great job. Thank you so much. You add so much to our service. Thank you. I want to say good morning and to everyone that's here today, whether you are a first-time visitor at Center of Unity or whether you are a longtime family member. I'm so glad that you joined us here this morning to share as we live stream the love of God out into the universe. What a blessing that we get to do this. I also want to say thank you to Reverend Linda and to the staff here at Center of Unity for inviting me to come and spend some time with you this morning. It is my blessing. I want to start off by asking you a question. In your spiritual journey, have you ever experienced what has been most commonly referred to as ebb and flows of your spiritual practices? Have you ever gone through moments on your journey that you felt you were totally connected to the divine and then experienced moments where you were like completely disconnected? I mean, have you ever experienced that, right? I want to talk this morning about the idea of spiritual plateaus. In my spiritual journey, I've experienced what I've perceived to be places along that journey where I was completely in tune with divine mind. And as well, I've experienced places that could only be described as bat crap crazy. Anyone relate? Right? Okay, I can't see y'all at home, but I see heads shaking, right? I know it's true. In researching this topic a little bit, I ran across a gentleman by the name of Ray Pritchard, who is the president of Keep Believing Ministries. That includes a national preaching ministry, a spiritual outreach to China, and some other goodwill efforts. He was once invited to speak on the theme of living on a spiritual plateau. And the pastors and elders who had invited him, had extended the invitation, asked him to address the following three topics. One, why does God allow us to plateau in our spiritual life? Two, how does he use this to our benefit and to his glory? And three, how does he get us out and off of said plateau, right? Pritchard found the invitation intriguing and also a bit confusing because no matter where he looked, he couldn't find anything in the Bible, nothing on the subject of spiritual plateaus. As far as he could determine, the word plateau is never applied in the Bible to anything other than a literal geological formation. And beyond that, he had some trouble in defining the term, even though he thought he knew what the elders had meant by it. So I'm a guy that likes to look up definitions. I want to know what it is. I believe words matter, and I want to know what it is that I'm talking about. So I went to dictionary.com, and there it offers two definitions of the word plateau. One is a noun, which we all know is a word that describes a thing. And the other was a verb, which we all know is a word used to describe an action. So it stands then that a plateau is both a thing and an action. The noun definition is an area of relatively level high ground. And the verb definition is a state of little or no change following a period of activity or progress. Like, I reach a plateau and then I chill out a bit, right? So, noun versus verb. I'd like to suggest to you this morning that most people think of a plateau as more of just a thing than an action. Now, sure, there is action to get to said plateau, but we generally think of a plateau as a place, a destination, an arrival. But I'd like to unpack that just a little bit. In the year 2000, I was living in Nashville, Tennessee, and I found myself in a really bad place in my life. I'd allowed myself to get involved in an incredibly dysfunctional and codependent relationship. It was one of those, I walked into the room, saw him sitting across the room, our eyes locked kind of things, right? And we were off to the races. Now, I hear laughter here, and I don't know about at home, so there must be some identification there. It was a moment in my life where my selfishness and self-centeredness was in full force, and the maintenance of my spiritual condition was nowhere to be found. I mean, it was there somewhere, but it certainly wasn't the first thing that I thought of each morning when I woke up. During that period of time, I began to understand that there's a difference between pain and suffering. I'm one of those people that believes that pain is inevitable. We all have it. There's no one's immune. We all have pain. We're all going to experience it. But I believe suffering is optional. It's a choice, often a choice to play the victim. Now, in this situation, I chose, unconsciously I might add, to play the victim, and suffering was a daily occurrence in my life. And this is how bad it got. I remember laying in the middle of my living room floor on multiple occasions, huddled up in a fetal position, hysterically crying. And I would get on the phone to my spiritual advisor at the time, and I would scream into the phone, "I thought I was more spiritual than this!" And he would say to me, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He said in a very calm voice as I was screaming in the phone to him, and I really did do that. He said, "You are, Rick. What you're experiencing right now are what I like to call spiritual plateaus. You're just going from one plateau to the next in your spiritual journey." He went on to explain that each and every day we all let our life experiences propel us in one way or the other. Either we choose to shut down and drown out the noise because we just can't deal with it, or we take an action to help get us through the pain. Now, during that hideous experience, I chose to shut down and play the victim. And I remember saying things like, "Why is this world treating me this way? And doesn't God want me to be happy? Blah, 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 blah." I mean, that's where I was. That's where my little selfishness was at that time. My spiritual advisor also shared with me that as we find ourselves going from one spiritual plateau to the next, there is this space right here. There's this spiritual plateau, spiritual plateau, spiritual plateau. There's this space right here, this space of time. Sometimes we like to call it transition. We like to call it transformation. But it's that time where we're going to go through something to get us from one point to the next. For some, for the more enlightened of us, it's a fairly easy process to get from one level to the next. But for others, there's an enormous amount of pain and sometimes suffering that's attached to it as we go from one plateau to the next. Rebellion dogs our every step. Oftentimes we let that rebellion just shut us down. Recently, a friend of mine, Kelly Sanford, shared on her Facebook timeline a video of her pastor, Josh Howerton, at Lake Point Church. She shared something that hit me like a ton of bricks. He was talking about this idea of not getting trapped in the past. And I thought it was so powerful that I actually wanted to share a piece of it with you today. Pastor Howerton said this: "Being offended is inevitable. Living offended is a choice. Being offended in this world is absolutely inevitable, but holding on to your hurts, that's a choice. God has a plan for you and for your future, but bitterness will freeze you in the past. Bitterness freezes us in the past. So here's how your soul works. With hurt, here's how it works. If we don't get it out in forgiveness, we will act it out in bitterness. Think about that. If we don't get it out in forgiveness, we will act it out in bitterness. Until we forgive, it's a spiritual law. Until we forgive, we get frozen in time and spend the rest of our lives reacting to something or to someone that happened long ago. Pastor Howerton went on to say, and I love this, there's always an opportunity for offense and an equal opportunity to fall into that trap. Then he asked this question. He said, why do I use the word trap? In Luke 17:1, there was a time where Jesus was teaching his disciples how to follow him and have their hearts transformed. We know about that story. Here's what Jesus said about this trap that comes up in our lives. Jesus said this, it's impossible that no offenses shall come. Seriously, Jesus? I mean, really? That's what you got for me? That was my response when I first heard that. It's like, come on, dude, seriously, I need better than that. But what I found is that those words were profound in their content because they helped set me up for truth. They helped set me up to a place that I can show up to today in truth. I don't know about you, but what that teaches me is that no matter how hard I try, I'm going to be offended in this life. Someone is going to say something that is going to make me, I almost said something terrible, is going to make me mad. But my goal in that moment, my goal is to not let my little self, my pride and my ego take over, right? My hope is that I fall immediately back onto the spiritual teachings of Jesus and go straight to that place of love, straight to that place of forgiveness, straight to that place of understanding. Last month in her series, Hell in the Hallway, Light at the Door, Reverend Linda talked to us about forgiveness and what it takes to embody that in our lives today. One morning she said in her meditation, I love this, to forgive is to give understanding for. Think about that. To forgive is to give understanding for. I'd never thought about it that way. And she broke it down like that, and I was like, boom, mind blown. And what I learned in that moment was that for me to forgive, I need to be willing to let go and surrender any preconceived notions I may have about someone or something so that I can be open to understanding them or it in a different way. It's not always easy for me. I wish it were. I also loved how Reverend Linda reminded us of what Reverend Ellen Davenport often shares, quote, reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. I need God to show me in very plain and simple terms what I need to learn today to express his love right here, right now. One of the best ways to do that is to use the prayer that Reverend Ellen also uses. God, lead me where you need me and speak to me in ways that I cannot possibly misunderstand. I will never forget the very first time I ever heard that prayer. I think Dottie Gandy had come to share here at Center of Unity, and I was out in the congregation, and I was like, dude, seriously, write that down. That was powerful stuff. Why? Because it's simple. It is simple. I kind of equate it to like spiritual calculus for dummies. In his newest book, Let Us Dream, The Path to a Better Future, Pope Francis said this. He points out that we all need both personal liberation and liberation from unjust and harmful systems. Unfortunately, many people have been taught that salvation is merely an individual escape plan for the next world, right? That's what many people have been taught, which has not produced many liberated people or liberated healthy systems. Pope Francis goes on to write this: in every personal COVID, so to speak, every stoppage, what is revealed is what needs to change. Our lack of internal freedom, our idols that we've been serving, the ideologies that we've tried to live by, or the relationships that we've neglected. Francis goes on to say, we all think we are freely and consciously making our own choices when, in my experience, most people live most of their lives unconsciously. Before transformation, we are basically sleepwalking, going through the motions on the surface of life, which is basically sleepwalking. And that's why he says or reminds us that spiritual teachers like Jesus and Buddha tell us to wake up. Just wake up. It's that simple, right? When our ego or our small self is in charge, we are not free. We are being ordered about by our preferences, by our likes, by our dislikes. Let me ask you a question. Is it really liberating? Think about this. Ask yourself this question. Is it really liberating to believe that the world revolves around us and that we must hold it all together? There's no liberation in that at all on any level. As we engage in contemplative prayer and allow God to transform us through great love and great pain, we are reminded of our inherent connectedness. We are liberated from thinking of ourselves as somehow separate from everyone and everything else, including God. Here at Center of Unity, and Sharon, thank you for sharing your reading this morning and reminding us that here at Center of Unity, our fallback is free of judgment, full of love. But even with that being what we build our spiritual community on, even we have found ourselves at times losing sight of the love that Jesus taught us. I can't speak for anyone else, but I can tell you that I know that there have been times recently where I didn't act or speak in a manner that exemplified those teachings. I'm a work in progress. Thank God for teachable moments. I still have work to do. I'm grateful that the grace of God is not something that I have to earn. It's a gift that is freely given to me. And I can let that grace cover me, guide me, and know that it will forever sustain me. My only job today is to become aware of how I'm living my life in response to that grace. What am I doing to show up to that grace, that gift that has been given to me? Am I releasing, surrendering, and forgiving? Or during that transition period between one spiritual plateau and the next? Or am I holding on to, retaining, and bitter? Great question. That kind of personal inventory always takes me to the next level. I love when I take the opportunity to do that. My choice today is when I'm offended, or when I'm hurt, when I'm confused, my choice is to surrender those things directly to God. I know that it's always my choice as to whether I'm going to jet past the pain and go straight to the suffering, straight to that place where I am taking back control and trying to manage the whole thing myself, which, by the way, I don't do very well. I don't know about you, but I don't do that very well at all. Or am I going to use that space between the spiritual plateaus that I found myself in as an opportunity to heal and grow in the love of God? As we are reaching for that area of relatively level high ground after a period of activity or progress, noun versus verb, It's my hope and prayer that we never forget that the results of our journey will be defined by the actions we take during that transformation. For to transform is to make new. Remembering one of the 3 topics that the elders had asked Ray Pritchard to cover in his talk on living on a spiritual plateau, as we leave this service today, let us be reminded to ask ourselves, how can God use this right here, how can God use this to our benefit and to his glory? How can we use that space to grow in our faith, strengthen our belief, and fortify our resolve to be the living expressions of God on this earth? Because, folks, we either get it out in forgiveness or we act it out in bitterness. Now, that's a spiritual plateau I want to live on. Let us pray. Divine love, you have always been, are now, and will always be our source of strength and guidance. Should we find ourselves in a place of pain, help us to remember that your love will sustain us and that it will keep us from transforming that pain into suffering. Help us to remember that forgiveness is the answer. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of ourselves. For it is in that forgiving that we receive. Divine love, we gather today under the beauty of your holiness and the holiness of your beauty to be reminded that in that receiving, we can live the lives we were put here to live for you. And so it is, and so it shall be. Amen.